Yeah.
The quorum should have.
Ah.
Yeah, Town Convergence Subcommittee meeting order. We need to move to item number 1, right?
I think there's a verbal roll call.
Yes. Sharon, do you want to do Sharon, you could do the roll call?
Sure. Natalie Meeks, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
John Armstrong, are you here? Ravish, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Vincent, are you here? AB, are you here?
I am here.
Thank you.
We have a quorum.
Yes, we have a quorum.
All right, then, I'm gonna move on to item number 1, approval of the minutes of Underground Convergence Subcommittee meeting of February 26th, 2020.
Oh, was that a motion to approve?
If you'd like to make one, Natalie.
Yes, go ahead, Natalie.
Okay, yes, I will make a motion to approve.
There's-
Vanish is gonna second the motion?
I second it.
Yes,
And for vote, it's a roll call because it's telecom.
right.
Okay, Natalie, yes or no?
Yes.
John Armstrong? Ravish, yes or no?
Yes.
Vincent, yes or no? AB, yes or no?
Yes. Motion carried. The second item presentation, modification of the underground conversion program, 5 years plan update.
So yes, Chairman, we do have a presentation for you tonight, and I'll be giving that presentation. First of all, I hope that you and all the other members are doing well and thank you for during this period of time. It has been a while since our last meeting in February earlier this year, and we thought that this would be a good opportunity to update the subcommittee on some of our projects as well as the status of our FEMA grant. And in addition, we'll also be discussing our undergrounding program current financials and how it's been impacted by the pandemic. So as everyone is already aware, the pandemic continues to take a toll on the economy, and Anaheim's electric utility is no exception. Based on the latest budget projections, the city is anticipating about $75 to $100 million in this fiscal year. On the Anaheim's electric utility side, we are projecting to lose about $25 million in retail sales. And one thing I'd like to point out, and the significance of that, is that our undergrounding program relies on the 4% underground surcharge that gets assessed to these retail sales. One thing I'd like to point out also is that part of the projected $25 million in lost retail sales is already factoring in the increase in sales that we're seeing on the residential sector, which is due to customers working more from home and students participating in online learning. However, the residential customers only make up about 30% of the electric revenue. The other 70% of retail sales falls within the commercial and industrial sector, which includes hotels, large manufacturing plants, and of course Disneyland. And so long as they remain closed or not operating to their capacity, we are anticipating about a 20% loss in our revenue. Now, Anaheim Electric Utility was able to find some various labor and operating savings to kind of help offset some of the revenue loss by about $8 to $10 million. However, we will have to rely on our reserves to cover deficit. Other mitigation efforts that we have incorporated is to defer capital improvement projects and only focus on prioritizing projects that are immediately impacting reliability. So this chart that you see in front of you is illustrating our annual revenues versus our expenditures over previous and future years. Over the last 4 years, we have been averaging about $14.5 million in revenues. We see that this year in 2020, our revenues currently is about $600,000 less than in 2019, and it's projected to stay about the same for 2021. However, revenues are projected to go back to the where our electric demand from commercial and industrial sector is expected to increase as the sector recovers from the pandemic. Now, on the other hand, expenditures will hover around the $9 to $11 million range for 2020 and 2021, as you can see from the blue line. As some of our projects are currently in design or just starting construction, where the bulk of the project's costs have not hit the books yet, we see a pretty low expenditure rate for this year and also next year projected. However, when we get to the 22 year, we see a huge spike in the expenditures to be about $26 million, and that is where we anticipate the boulevard undergrounding to start construction at that time. Currently, our cash balance is about $19 million. We have about $9.3 million committed for projects on Euclid, Royal Oak, and Eucalyptus, which are all in construction right now. Based on our current 5-year plan, we have about $104 million for projects that are in the design or planning stages. This is what we project will be the cost for all the projects that we currently have right now in our 5-year plan. So this is a chart showing our current and projected cash flow. As I mentioned earlier, our cash balance through September 2020 is about $19 million. Based on our projections and where some of the projects in our 5-year plan will start hitting the books, we can actually forecast out and see what our balance will be over the next 5 years. One thing I'd like to point out is that because we are anticipating a reduction in our revenues, some of the current projects under our 5-year plan were pushed back by a few months in order to allow for our revenues to replenish and so that we'll be able to balance that with our projected future expenditures. And this big drop-off that you see here going from 2021 through down to 2022, that's where Beach Boulevard is anticipated to start construction. That's why you see that big decline. And we'll talk more about Beach Boulevard in the next couple of slides. So looking at our active and planned projects under our 5-year plan, we have 5 projects that are electrically complete. However, phone and cable TV are currently in progress to complete their undergrounding. These projects are Lincoln and Dale, Euclid, Orangewood, and Mira Loma. We have 4 projects that are currently in the design or construction phase, which include Beach Boulevard, Sycamore, Santa Ana, Canyon Royal Oak, and Eucalyptus. And we have 7 projects that are currently in the planning stages, which include Ball Brookhurst, La Palma Anaheim, La Palma East, La Palma Sunkist, Santa Ana State College, Olive, Vermont, and Cerritos and Nutwood. So these are all the projects that are currently under our 5-year plan. As the subcommittee might recall in our last meeting, or our meeting last year in November, we had proposed 12 candidate projects for the subcommittee's consideration, 2 projects per council district. The subcommittee was able to evaluate and reduce the selection down to 6 candidate projects, 1 per council district for further evaluation. So these are the 6 candidate projects that was presented to the subcommittee back in February earlier this year, and they include Broadway in District 1, Ball in District 2, Santa Ana Harbor in District 3, Ball Euclid in District 4, Rio Vista in District 5, and the 7 segments that are within the fire threat zone in District 6. So based on the outcome of that meeting, the subcommittee was able to unanimously recommend the 7 overhead segments within the fire threat zone within District 6, with the caveat that we would be able to get the FEMA grant approved. So looking at each of these 7 segments a little closer, we see that the majority of these segments are located within a low fire threat zone or Tier 1. We do have 1 segment that is located within the Oak Canyon Nature Center, which is a Tier 2 and also a Tier 3. Meaning that it's a highly elevated and extreme fire threat zone area. However, the line is frequently de-energized and is only used when we really need it for emergency purposes. The estimated cost to do this project is about $10 million, and we'll underground about 3¼ miles of overhead lines. The cost share grant, FEMA will be contributing to 75% of the total project's cost, and Anaheim will be required to fund the remaining 25%. Now, based on our last update in March, was that Cal OES did recommend our project to FEMA. Recently, we have heard back from FEMA, and they wanted us to basically separate our project into 2 phases. So the first phase is the design phase, and the second phase is the construction phase. And the reason why they're asking us to do this is because of their main concern of potential environmental impact that this project might cause during construction. So they did not want to commit such a large amount of grant money to the project just yet. If it comes to find out that if there's environmental restrictions, it could delay or cancel the project. And once we do get the approval, essentially our clock starts ticking at that time, where they are giving us a 3-year time frame to get it done from beginning to end. So that's why it's so crucial to basically determine what those restrictions are environmentally and be able to provide those restrictions to FEMA and how we can minimize that effort. So by splitting the project into two phases, we would be able to identify potential environmental impacts during the design phase and provide FEMA with mitigation strategies so that during the construction we wouldn't have these types of
With Q&A. I have one comment on why we were looking for this category setting and understanding that everybody's unique.
I'm sorry, would you be able to repeat that question? Can I ask that person to repeat that question?
Can you repeat the questions?
I guess we can come back to it if there's additional questions.
I guess I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Did you complete the design phase already?
So part of FEMA's stipulation is that we cannot start at all first project because that will void the application. So part of FEMA's requirements is that until they give us the green light, we cannot do anything at all. We would love to start the design phase because then at least we can get a head start on it, but that wouldn't qualify us for reimbursement by FEMA.
Right, but you mentioned that FEMA asked you to divide the project in two phases. This for design and the other phase for build, right?
That is correct. Yes.
Right, and then that means there is a communication between the department and FEMA, right?
Yes. So we actually communicated through Cal OES and they communicated with
Carl,
FEMA.
yes.
So part of that requirement is that even though they're asking us to split into two phases, we are basically waiting for them to approve the phase one first before we can even start the design. So meaning that until they give us the green light, whether it be for phase one or phase two, we wouldn't be able to start anything until that time comes.
How would they give you the green light without providing some information, just an application only?
Yeah, so part of it is that we revise the application to basically allocate costs for design and allocate costs for construction. And we have already resubmitted that back to them, and Cal OES then resubmitted back to FEMA. Right now, we're just waiting on word from FEMA and Cal OES whether we can move forward with phase one or not.
But that means the fund will come from FEMA, not Carl. Carl OES does not contribute to any
Exactly.
such amount, just everything.
Right.
Carl OES, they communicate with FEMA, and FEMA passes. Carl OES passes to the city, right?
Yes, sir. So basically, Cal OES is more of a mediator, and we coordinate through them, and they coordinate with FEMA. So they're our avenue to communicate and be able to get the funding approved through FEMA. Basically that's the process where any questions that any concerns that FEMA has, they would go through their channels through Cal OES, and then from that point on, Cal OES then responds to us of whatever FEMA is requiring at that time.
Okay, that means Carl OES has their own requirements in order for them to get involved.
So usually Cal OES knows what it takes for, usually don't know what FEMA is asking for. And when we do have meetings with them, Cal OES, we would get clarification on what exactly is needed for us to resubmit this package so that there's no additional delays where we're submitting insufficient information or whatever the situation might be. So we try to make sure that we communicate with Cal OES to make sure that they are telling us exactly what FEMA is needing from us in order for us to move the project forward.
All right, thank you.
So basically how this will work is to add on to what Mr. Chairman just mentioned, is that FEMA will allocate money for phase one based on our cost estimate, which right now is about $1 million for the design and engineering environmental studies. That's how much it's gonna cost to do that. And whatever isn't spent can actually be carried into the construction phase. Phase two, which is the construction portion of this, application, is definitely not a guarantee, but it is very likely depending on the outcome of phase one. So let's say we go through phase one and we have identified what the environmental restrictions are, we provide mitigation efforts to that, and here are all the information that FEMA is asking from us, and we provide that information to them, and everything checks out on their end. The process of approving that phase two becomes very narrow, where and also expedited, because we wouldn't have to wait that long as opposed to having them approve the project as a whole. So in our opinion, I think this would be a good thing where we actually would be able to concentrate on the design and studies first, and then roll right back into construction once we have all of that mitigation strategies provided to FEMA. So as far as phase two, we obviously don't know how long it will take for it to be approved. It really depends on when we actually get the green light from FEMA to start the design side of it. And as I mentioned, we would not be able to start anything until we get the green light to do the design for FEMA. Are there any other questions in regards to the FEMA portion of the presentation?
Do you have any questions?
No, I think that's, a good process, and we need to move forward with that. I mean, I can't imagine not getting the environmental approved for that project. So I'm sure you guys will get it done and mitigate whatever needs to be mitigated and move the project forward. So yes, keep going on that.
Perfect, thank you. So as part of our current 5-year plan update, we would like to provide some project updates showing ongoing activities within each council district.
Yeah, before we go to project update, I just want to see that I don't think that the underground project does not impacted by this is kind of like economical issues in the city. Because you see the issue, they lost like maybe almost like 25 million, something like that, as you mentioned. But the budget that we have, that comes from the from the tax, right? Whatever that, what the
surcharge.
The surcharge,
Right. Yeah.
that means surcharge still will maintain that money for the existing project, right?
Yeah, so I think I let me go back to a couple of slides beforehand, because I think we touched a little bit about that, where okay, so this is our so based on what I had described here on the slide, you are correct, AB. Well, if you really look at it, $25 million in retail sale loss. How the 4% surcharge is going to be impacted is going to be about $1 million. If you really do the math, 25 million over 4%, you're talking about $1 million loss in the undergrounding fund. So we will see some type of impact, not to the extent that other departments are seeing. And of course, that's why I mentioned that we would push back some of our projects by a few months. It's not saying that we're going to cancel any project. We're just going to push it back for a few months to let that gap come back up. And, but we still move forward with those projects that we have in our 5-year plan.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Move ahead.
Okay, so within District 1, we are working with telecommunication companies to remove their facilities on Lincoln and Dale. Currently, only cable TV is left on those poles, and they're working to underground their facilities. One particular on Beach Boulevard is that we have completed our underground design, and we have submitted the permit engineering evaluation report, or in short, PEER report, to Caltrans a few weeks ago for their review and approval. The reason why this project has been delayed is because Caltrans is requiring us to go through a more stringent detailed permit review process versus the typical encroachment permit. This is because the undergrounding will be impacting the entire length of Beach Boulevard, and not just one or two crossings that we have done in our previous projects. So definitely, this is something that we have been working on for the past year to be able to get this package together to submit to Caltrans for their review. They did mention that their typical peer review time frame is about 1 to 2 years, but indicated that they will try to expedite the review to as soon as 6 months. Of course, we are very cautiously optimistic. So we are hopeful that at the very earliest time in next summer of 2021, but we will continue to do our follow-ups with the Caltrans management group and to make sure that anything that they need on their end as far as information, we'll be able to provide that to them. And in the meantime, Public Works continues to have ongoing discussions with Caltrans on the relinquishment of beach. And I think right now it's on Caltrans' side to provide us with response on the cost of this relinquishment.
But regardless of the relinquishment, still, you could go ahead with the underground part.
Yes, sir. So if there was a relinquishment in place beforehand, it would make everything a lot easier. Technically own, our Public Works Department would own the street, and we would just have to go through with a typical plan check process.
Right now.
But since we are doing it before the relinquishment, we have to follow Caltrans rules, and which details that we have to go through the peer process.
Thank you.
This is Ravish. I have a quick question. So on District 6, I saw an estimated budget of about $10 million for 3.2 something miles. And here for Beach Boulevard, we're looking at about 1.5 miles, estimated at $15 million. I'm assuming, I just want to confirm, I'm assuming the cost difference is between underground transformers, sidewalks. It's a different kind of a project. Is that correct? What all contributes to this cost per mile, if you will, difference?
That's a great question. So part of this project is that we have Edison facilities that are also on the poles. If you look at the photo on the presentation, you see that there's multiple circuits or what we call distribution circuits on the poles. Edison owns one of those circuits. So in order for us to do this underground, they would also have to underground their facilities as well. And because this project is because Edison has already fulfilled their obligation to underground based on their franchise agreement, we basically would have to bear the cost to underground their facilities for them. So that's why you see a higher dollar amount on this project versus the proposed project within District 6. So as you can see here, the cost for the Anaheim portion is about $14.5 million, and the Edison portion is about $6 million in order for us to underground their facility.
You have like a memorandum of understanding with
Yes. So right now we are working on a agreement, reimbursement agreement with SCE. It's still being processed, and Dan and I are currently working on that. So we have received initial cost estimates from them. The electrical portion will be done by their contractor. However, the civil or the substructure work will be done by our contractor. So when we are ready to go out to bid and solicit the bids from contractors, we basically include a section in there for the Edison substructure work, which is anticipated to be about $4 million. So roughly together, we're talking about a $6 million project just for the Edison portion only.
but the line is going to be also with the power line together for Edison. For this is Edison. Yes. Oh, this is a transmission line, right? Not a distribution line.
No, so both facilities owned by Edison and Anaheim are distribution 12 kV facilities.
12 people. Okay.
Yeah. So I think part of the additional cost is that initially we had approached Edison to do a joint trench, where we have all the facilities under one trench. but because of heat loss and all the dissipation on the electrical side, Edison would not allow us to have their facilities within our trench. So therefore, we have to have two separate trenches, one for Anaheim and all the telecommunication companies, and then one for just the Edison.
But the telecommunication companies goes with our trench, with the Anaheim.
With the Anaheim trench, that is correct, yes.
And then separate trenches just only for Edison.
That is correct. Yeah, so part of this is that we did incorporate their design into our design, so that because ultimately it will be the city's contractor that will be doing this project. Otherwise, we'll have multiple contractors working in the same spot, which can be very problematic. So we try to make it simpler and just say, okay, Anaheim's contractor can do all of this work, and therefore it makes it simpler for scheduling, for being able to plan the project out better.
Just to combine them together in one contract.
Yes, correct. So Mr. Ravnish, did I answer your question, or did you have any?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Within District 2, we have completed the undergrounding on Euclid Street. Poles have been topped down to telecommunication level, and we anticipate phone and cable TV to complete their undergrounding by spring of 2021. We have two projects in the planning stages on Ball Road from Brookhurst to Euclid. And we also have a project on Nutwood and Cerritos, which is the next project within our 5-year plan that we're looking to bring to the PUB for district formation in the first quarter of 2021. So that will be coming up shortly, right after the holidays. Speaking of Euclid, this is a before photo of Euclid looking north, adjacent to the Loera High School. The project undergrounded about 1.3 miles of overhead line and cost about $12.5 million. Construction took about 2 years, and final paving and striping has already been completed. The completion of this project means that all of Euclid is now undergrounded from South City limit to North City limit. This is the after photo. As you can see, the difference it makes when you have all the electrical lines removed. On the right hand of the photo, you see that there's still holes that are still remaining with telecommunication facilities that are still attached to them, and they're working to underground those facilities. Here's another before photo on Euclid, facing north towards the railroad tracks.
When you mentioned the cable company, they're working on to make them underground. Do they gonna have a separate trench, or gonna use your the Anaheim Public Utility trench? I mean the line that to pass the cable line, right?
Yeah, so part of this project and part of all the projects that we have, we joint trench with them, and they install their we install their conduit system for them, and they reimburse us that cost through the joint trench agreement. And when they're ready to pull cable, they would pull into those conduits that was installed for them. So basically everything is already there. That means that they're not going to dig up the street again, hopefully, if they're not missing anything. But that's the plan, is that the whole point of joint trench is to reduce costs, and also making sure that we repave the roadway quickly, so that as far as cars going through, the drivability of it is improved. So we try to implement that process, and we always make sure that before we do any final paving, we verify with them that if they're not missing anything out there, now is the time to do it. If not, then basically we'll have to figure out whether they need to go through the sidewalk. But the majority of time, they are able to let us know that, hey, we've got everything covered, we're not missing anything on our end, and we're ready to do our cabling.
But what is the size of the conduit?
So it depends on the carriers. AT&T, for example, our phone company, requires 4-inch conduit. And when they, let's say, go to a private property, like say for a residence or a house, it can be reduced down to a 2-inch conduit. So it just depends on which part of their substructure will dictate the size and the number of conduits needed.
Yeah, the conduit that has the power line can be also, you could put, the cable with it at the same time, or there's any insulation in between?
So you mean the separation between conduits? So our standards calls for a 1 foot clearance. So meaning that at the bottom of our trench, we'll have our electrical facilities. And then 1 foot above that, where we put back native fill compacted, we will have their conduits on top of that 12 inches vertically. So there's always a separation between their conduits and our conduits.
There is a separation.
Yes, in case that we do in the future need to access that portion of the duct bank, we would know that it would be our duct bank and not their facility, because ours will be.
Doesn't mean they're gonna have some trench too. If you say that, you don't put that consideration first for the cable company, that means they're gonna have another trench with the conduit to put there line, right?
Yeah, so usually when, for the most part, when we underground on the main roadway, their conduit, their main backbone is what they call it, will be within our conduit trench. When they start peeling off and going to residences, we normally would have to do the same. So for the most part, we also join trench there. However, sometimes it requires them to do a sole trench, and our contractors do that sole trench for them. So no matter what, their contractor is not digging into the street at all. It will be our contractor that will be handling all that work when it comes to the substructure side.
Thank you.
And we'll go back to this one. This is a before photo looking north past the railroad tracks, and this is the after. And once again, this is quite dramatic with all the wires and the poles removed in this particular section of Euclid. So as I mentioned earlier, we are planning to bring Nutwood and Cerritos to the Public Utilities Board for district formation in early 2021. This project is located on Cerritos from Nutwood to Euclid, and from Cerritos to Nutwood to Euclid, and on Nutwood from Catilla to Ball Road. This project is located within District 2 and will underground about 1.5 miles of overhead lines. Estimated cost is about $9.5 million, and it will underground distribution and telecommunications facilities, as well as a railroad crossing just north of Catilla. So we will be bringing this to PUB for district formation in a public hearing starting in the first quarter of next year, possibly in January or February. In District 3, we have a few projects that are currently in the planning stages on La Palma and Anaheim, and also Santa Ana Street. We are in the design process on Sycamore. It's about 50% design completion, and we'll underground about 3.25 miles. Estimated cost is about $5.3 million. And there is a planned street improvement project that's currently in progress within the Sabina neighborhood. And undergrounding will be coordinated with our Public Works Department. And we're looking to start this project in late 2021 is what we have as part of our 5-year plan. In District 4, we completed all electrical work on Orangewood, located between Harbor and Lewis. Phone and cable TV are currently working to underground their facilities there. The Fargo Street paving on Orangewood is going to be done by Public Works and is currently in progress. We also have a few projects in planning on Vermont and Olive and Santa Ana Street. In District 5, we were complete with the undergrounding for the majority of Mira Loma and Miller. However, there are some remaining poles that that still have cable TV still attached to them, and they are working to underground that portion. We have a few projects that are in the planning stages, which include La Palma and East and La Palma and Sunkist, as well as Santa Ana Street. Within District 6, we have a few projects currently in construction. One of those projects is Santa Ana Canyon Road in Royal Oak. For this project, we ended up splitting this project into 2 phases. The first phase is on Royal Oak, which is currently in construction, which started earlier in May of 2020 and will be completed in May 2021. This is a photo of the trench work that is currently taking place on Royal Oak right now. You can see to the top of the photo the pole lines that is up at the situations. So by undergrounding the segment, we will be able to eliminate that issue in the future. Phase 2 on Santa Ana Canyon Road is currently going through bidding right now and is planned for construction in April of 2021. We also have a project that is currently construction on Eucalyptus. This project is part of our wildfire mitigation plan and is located within an extreme fire threat zone. Completion is estimated to be around April of 2021. And this is a photo of an underground transformer vault that was recently installed on a private property off of Eucalyptus. The hole was about 8 foot deep and required the proper shoring. One of the big challenges here was finding an area where we can actually place the equipment without impacting existing utilities, while also being mindful of residents' concerns about their landscaping. So based on this photo, you can see what it takes to go from the trench portion into a final product, which is the photo on the right. And essentially, we're going to try to install some shrubs around it, just so that it can blend in with the existing shrubbery for that particular property.
Normally, the wall is rectangular, but this one is circular.
Yes, so this particular one is cylindrical because it's one of our single-phase, what we call single-phase underground transformers. And part of this is that because this is a residential area where we only need to provide 120 or 240 volt service, this is the type of transformer that we would be able to provide at that time. So imagine that if you see on the pole that there's a transformer there, it's cylindrical. So by putting that underground, you have also a cylindrical barrier to house that piece of transformer in there. So what is the action for the subcommittee to take tonight? We would like to ask the subcommittee to decide whether we should continue to wait until FEMA approves the grant. Obviously, we do not know FEMA's schedule based on the most recent submittal that we have got back to them on by separating it into 2 phases. And therefore, this is still a variable. Another action tonight would be for subcommittee to consider recommending a different project from the previous candidate projects list that I had provided earlier to include an upcoming 5-year plan. Alternatively, the subcommittee can decide not to recommend any projects for the time being due to possible financial uncertainty and possibly make up grounds later by adding 1 or 2 new projects in future fiscal years. We still have about 7 projects that are in the planning stages under our current 5-year plan that we are still moving forward with. And however, any new projects that are being added will be added to the back end of our 5-year plan, unless there is a situation where we need to reprioritize a project due to either a street widening or, for example, the Eucalyptus project where we have to reprioritize that to push it up further because of the threats due to fire threat, due to it being in a fire threat zone. We can reprioritize at that time, but generally a new project will be added to the tail end of the 5-year plan.
Do you want us to take an action of each one, and what the recommendation from the public utility?
So we are flexible, of course. It's ultimately whatever the subcommittee chooses to do, we will be able to make it work. Our thought is that definitely because of the uncertainty, even though, as I mentioned, we're talking about $1 million less in revenues, and things are kind of being pushed back. We just don't want to keep adding a project to the tail end and not being able to get to that until beyond 5 years. And that's the concern that we have, because we want to make sure that we at least start the design process and not having to keep pushing that project back further out, because obviously resources is one big thing, and also the revenues that we're anticipating hopefully will stay around that $14 million mark.
See, first of all, the item number 1. See, that continue to wait until FEMA approves. This is the way how the department wants it, or we could just approve it regardless of FEMA approves it or not.
So that could be one consideration, is that we can wait and see what FEMA comes back with, whether they can approve of the design aspect of that, and we can start that project and bring it to subcommittee as a new project to be added.
So repeat that, please. Was that a proposal to not do something, or?
Yeah, sorry, Natalie. So in response to AB's question, is that we are we're okay waiting for the FEMA grant to approve our project, but we just also
Yes.
we also just don't want the subcommittee to wait without adding a new project to the 5-year plan, because typically we would add a new project to the 5-year plan in the May timeframe, which is next year. So we want to add a new project. We want to kind of get the idea from the subcommittee, if that's the direction that you want to do, is to add a new project while we continue to wait for FEMA. That's something that we can definitely do. So, for example, the 6 Kennedy projects that was presented earlier that we had discussed in February, I believe the subcommittee mentioned, for example, the Broadway project was kind of a backup project at that time.
Right.
So
Yeah.
have the ability to go ahead and move forward with that project and add to our 5-year plan. And then once we get the FEMA, we can obviously go to the next round for the following year, or we can just bring up to add another project to our 5-year plan at that time.
But once we get the approval from FEMA, we're going to have to move that project quickly, because there'll be a time frame on that grant. So I don't want to kick that project back into the beginning of the cycle where, it has to go through a year-long approval process. Would that happen? Or do we need to just keep the District 6 project as our project for this year until the grant comes through?
Yes, so part of that is, that could be one option, is to keep it active, pending the outcome from FEMA. Or if the subcommittee wants to move forward now, the subcommittee can decide to choose a different project while we're still waiting on FEMA. It's not to say that we're not going to add that project should the grant go through. So obviously, even if we add a project now, let's say, for example, another project from the 6 candidate projects list, that will be added to the tail end of our 5-year plan, unless it gets reprioritized. But definitely for this FEMA project, if we do get the approval, we are jumping on that right away, just because of that FEMA is allowing us to do it under.
Okay. All right. I want to make sure that continues to move forward, because I think that project's really important for the liability of the city and everything. So, but and then we had kind of a backup plan or a backup project that kind of rose to the top when we went through this whole process. Right off the top of my head, because I'm in the car, I can't remember it. But
That's correct.
So, are you asking for that, for the committee to approve moving forward with that now? And does our funding continue to look like we should move forward with that?
So based on our funding, we actually will hit a pretty low point, people further out into the 2025 timeframe, and that's where, if we add this project to the tail end, we'll see that low amount, at that time. So if we are able to, if the subcommittee wants to add that project now, we can certainly do that. It's just going to be pushed back, to the tail end of the plan. And you are correct. We did talk about a contingency plan, which is to have a backup project. I believe Broadway was the backup project that the subcommittee was considering. But I think at that time we were just hoping that FEMA will be able to get back to us quickly, and unfortunately that hasn't been the case. So what we're asking for the subcommittee's consideration for tonight is to either not add anything at all, or basically continue to wait and still add another project. Essentially, those are the two options.
But to add another project, we don't have an option right now. We don't know which one we need to look at.
So to add a new project, you would be basing it off on the 6 candidate projects that was presented to you in February.
Oh, yeah.
So it will be one of these projects, right? Back up to those slides.
Well, I guess my initial thought is that we should continue the District 6 project with the FEMA grant and continue that project forward. What are the negatives of maybe pushing off a approval of another project for a few months, hoping that life will be a little bit more back to normal? We will have lost a year, but then we would be in a better position to know the future and move forward and maybe actually meet in person where it's a little easier to have a discussion about it.
Hi, everyone. It's Janet. I wanted to just thank you for allowing me to join late, but Natalie, to just comment on your comment, the negative, there isn't much negative. And I think part of the reason is what Ben was saying on the cash flow is if we did add another project, it would have to be within a limited range of the cost of that project. However, if we wait and to a subsequent year, then our cash flow may show a better picture. And at that time, we could actually add 1 or 2 projects. So I don't see it as much of a negative. The only thing we need to consider too, and Ben, you might have some input on this, is we do have new council, and coming to this next year, we would be presenting something on the underground conversion project. And I think what we would really present is the option for this FEMA grant. Hopefully you've heard something by then, and then just give them an update on what our current plan is. So I don't even see a negative of not adding a plan in front of our council members. That's just
Yeah, I don't see a negative of that either, because it gives the new council people kind of an opportunity to get familiar with the project or the process before we bring a proposal forward. And I like the idea of having a larger sum of money to work with, because then that makes sure that the right project rises to the top, not just the cheapest project.
Yeah, well said.
Okay, you have to move a motion for this, the 3 items? Each one, or have?
Well, no, I think you could make a motion based on if the idea of people want to continue to wait, I would just make a motion based on number 1. And in the subcommittee actions, it's continue to wait until FEMA approves the project. That would be one motion. You don't need to make another one unless there's a desire to do something else. And there's nothing that prevents us from coming back in February or June or whenever to present adding a new project. So I think it's pretty. The options I think are pretty simple. From I gather what Natalie's saying.
Okay, Natalie, you could move a motion.
Okay. All right, I will move number 1 to continue to pursue the District 6 project.
All right, Ramesh, do you want to second that?
I second that.
All in favor? Roll call.
Do we need a roll call?
Yeah, a quick one would be good.
Okay. Natalie?
Yes.
Okay. John? Did not join. Ravish?
Yes.
And AB?
Yes. Motion carried.
If I may add one last thing, we do have some new subcommittee members that joined us. This is just a quick approval process that we have incorporated to our program for all these years. And typically we would identify the 12 projects, two projects per council district in the November timeframe, which is where we are currently now. And based on those 12, there's reduce it down to 6 projects, one per council district in the February meeting, and then would identify, recommend one of those 6 projects to the 5-year plan. Then, based on the 5-year plan, we will add that project to the presentation to the subcommittee in May, and then for the subcommittee to then consider recommendation to PUB. The 5-year plan will then be presented to PUB for recommendation to City Council, and then finally be brought to City Council for adoption in July. So this is basically the typical process for subcommittee to take, and this is what we have been following through within previous projects. And that is basically it.
All right, then. Do you have any questions before we move on to the following item, agenda item? All right, then. The plan for the next meeting would be that, or the proposed, which is February 24, 2021. Right? Okay. Then I want to move on item number 4, which is underground stuff. Item by underground stuff. Anyone does? Or
I have no idea.
Jeanette?
No, just one thing, AB, fortunately I was able to listen. I've taken this Zoom GoToMeeting thing to a new level here when I was trying to actually listen and present for the state's Wildfire Advisory Board at the same time as listening to our subcommittee conversation. So I have to tell you, I'm not good at multitasking and listening to 2 conversations at the same time. But lesson learned. Great questions, and welcome, Ravneesh, to our underground subcommittee. So happy to have you here. And thanks all for joining in, and Ben for a great presentation. And I hope that we do hear something from FEMA. We will let you know as soon as possible, and we will hopefully get back to normal here quickly. That's all I have, and appreciate the time you've taken to be here today.
Thanks, Janet. Glad to be here.
All right. Thank you.
Then we're going to move for the item by the underground conversion subcommittee members. Natalie, do you have anything to say?
No.
No,
Ramesh?
no.
For me, because this is going to be will be turned out. I don't know if I'm going to be on the February meeting or not, but really it was a pleasure to work with you guys. It was a good experience, and I learned a lot with very high technical, get a lot of good knowledge from you. Kind of thing that I will always feel proud about. Okay, then we have the last.
And AB,
Right.
thank you. Thank you for serving on this subcommittee. When you say you've turned out, is that you have hopes that to continue on our board? And if so, would you be able to continue on the subcommittee? Or termed out, meaning you do not have the ability to do that?
No, actually, just because of my term, they're going to come up with, because they have, I was under Lucille Crank.
Okay.
She's no longer going to council after January, whatever that day. That means all of us are going to, not all of us, I mean, myself.
Sure.
I might not serve on the board, but.
Okay, but we'll cross our fingers that you continue on.
Yes.
But again, thank you, AB. You bring a lot of good information and leadership to the subcommittee, so really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Nice work.
Move a motion to adjourn, right?
All right, I'll move adjournment.
All right. Ramesh, you want to second that?
I can do that.
Right. All in favor?
Okay, Natalie
Yes.
Armstrong, no. Ravneesh? And AB,
Yes.
and no Vincent. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, everybody.